Books. You'd think in this day and age that all the information you'd possibly need is available on the internet and just Google things and you'll find it. But in reality, there are some applications where you need what are classic, and this might be a controversial word to use, but Bibles of particular industries. So I've got a few of them here, and I want to say this video was inspired by another YouTuber called Maximum Ironthumper, an off-grid living blacksmith. I'll provide a link to his channel down below in the description. So the first book I'm going to take a look at is Neon Techniques and Handling. And this book is old. Let me just go in here and I'll just leave the exposure off actually. That's the best bit, isn't it? So it can self-adjust to the wide-ranging intensities. So this book was the third edition was published, I'm guessing in 1977. It's an old book. Ultimately, the technology of neon has stabilised. It's so old that there's not much changing anymore about it. In fact, it's quite hard to find anywhere that even makes neon tubes. But this book is just everything you could possibly wish to know. The only things, it's got pressures, transformer mounting systems, the electrode attachment systems, diameters, light levels, voltage across per foot of tube. It's got everything. The one thing it doesn't cover is modern aspects of neon. That includes the high-frequency electronic power supplies and some of the modern electronic flashers. But having said that, that's maybe a good thing, because some of the modern electronic high-frequency power supplies cause more problems than they solve. It's kind of ironic that the page this is open at this point in time is one showing oscilloscope waveforms of neon transformers, and how if you try to run too much tube from a given size of transformer, it can cause resonance and ringing and spikes that not only risks damaging the transformer but also the wiring and potentially the tube as well as a result. The book just basically, it is everything you could possibly need to know. It's just charts, it's processing equipment, including the bombarding stuff that's used to process the tubes once you've actually shaped them. Examples of signs, electrical background. It's just basically everything you could wish to know about neon. So who would actually buy this book? I reckon someone who was just into neon, because it's actually quite a nice book just to leaf through and just familiarise yourself with aspects of technology. But certainly in any sort of neon bending workshop, you will almost certainly find a well-used copy of this book, because it is just everything. It's got all that data in it. There is another neon book which you may find a lot harder to get. It speaks volumes that book that I just looked at, the old book, is still available to the best of my knowledge, because it is just the ultimate guide to neon. This is by Rudy Stern, a neon artist who operates a gallery. And it's just eye candy. This book is fundamentally what it is. It's pictures of signage around the world, past and present. It's pictures of really ill-advised wearable neon signs. And some of the pictures in the book actually show the construction of signage. Let me find this. This is a faked shot. It's a publicity shot. It's very hard to tell. It's so good. It makes me wonder, is that actually a picture that's been taken from above? Or is it a drawing? It's very hard to say. It's quite good if it is a drawing. So pictures of neon. There's a bit I'm looking for in here. Let me see if I can leaf through and find it. Where is it? It actually shows something that is very interesting. Let me find, is it here? No, we're approaching it. There it is. It shows how the old signs used to have multiple layers stacked on top of each other to provide animation. We take that for granted with LED video walls these days, but back then it was the only way to get animation, and it meant that it was quite, the more layers you added, the more complex it got, the more expensive it got. With video walls, it doesn't quite look the same though. It looks like a video wall, so you have to make up for it with graphics. This shows a sign being worked on. But this is a really interesting picture, because it shows someone working on a control system for animating the sign. And it's very hard to put a time a sort of a year in this picture. I'm looking at the control modules. Each of these is effectively a channel switch, and you can see it's got the Paxilin. It's got two large heat sinks with stud thyristors mounted on them, and then copper tape used as bus bars, suggesting that these are inverse parallel thyristor switching devices. That inverse parallel thyristors predated triacs. It's a super rugged way of switching AC power. And they've got basically hand-wound inductors, just air core inductors with just heavy wire wound in a coil. And the control system down here, I would guess it's a fairly analog type circuit. I wouldn't expect it to have integrated circuits from that era. There could be wrong. I can see transformers, which might suggest that they're using the transformers to drive the gates of the thyristors. The guy doing the work, though, you can't really tell the era from that either, because he's got a beanie, that doesn't tell anything. Jeans, that doesn't tell anything. Nylon padded jacket with elasticated cuffs, that doesn't tell anything. My guess for this is that it's somewhere in 1970. That's where I'd put that. It's a very interesting picture. Gives a insight into what was going on behind the scenes of the signage. But this is very much just an eye candy book. It shows the forming of the tubes. It's just an interesting book. Next book. Two books, effectively. This one is, I'm going to have to tame this down because the black and the reflection is make it quite tricky. Control systems for live entertainment, which morphed into show networks and control systems. So this one, I've got the second edition here. It went to a third edition, and then the author John Huntington, who is he's been in show control for a very long time. He teaches the subject. It moved on to show networks control systems because he felt that it was more biased towards networks these days, and he's absolutely right. When you go to a live show or you go to a theme park, it's all networks. And this book is just a thorough guide to that. It covers animatronics, it covers... Oh, let's take the exposure off again. Covers animatronics, it covers show control systems. It's not a book dedicated to animatronics. There are other books that are dedicated to the construction of animatronics. This is more the control systems associated with them. But the whole scope of this book is the control systems behind theme park rides, live events and stuff like that, and the networks that are used in them. Everything from DMX to SMPTE and the other things. SMPTE timecode being the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers. A lot of the standards that are used in show control these days are old standards that have just evolved over time, and because they've evolved over time, they're reliable, they're what still gets used because everything is designed to work with them. He provides lots of information about common sense when you've got a project of how to keep it as simple as possible and minimise the demand on machines and stuff like that, and security, making sure that people don't run rogue software on show control computer systems, which is quite important. Cables, networks, ArtNet, everything. I have to say, before reading this book, I didn't realise that ArtNet was developed by Artistic License, and they made it open source. They made it an open standard, which is good. It's very much in the style of that particular British company to do that. But ArtNet, whereas DMX allows you to transmit 512 channels of intensity or channel control over one line, the ArtNet then expands on that by allowing you to host 32,000, more than 32,000 entire DMX universes on one Ethernet cable. I have to say, don't do that. That's probably has its applications, but just putting all your eggs in one basket, as this book recommends against as well, is a terrible idea. Because you're better dividing it down into modules that, so you don't lose the whole show if something goes wrong, that you can easily go in and fix something. It just makes it easier. It's a sensible book. Very much aimed at showbiz. That's about the best thing to say about it. It is aimed at the industry. It also covers, I noticed the picture in the front here, data corruption through things like, well, a very good example. I think in this book they reference to dimmers causing problems with data networks for controlling the dimmers. But I've found one of the biggest problems is variable frequency motor drives. Oh, and neon. Neon signs are cold cathode, and anything high voltage and spiky is a problem for data networks. You have to keep them well separated. A very good book. It's another Bible. It's the Bible of the entertainment industry and show control. Gives you a reference to just about every communications standard there is. Another industry Bible, the Set Lighting Technician's Handbook. This is an ancient book, but it's still completely relevant. It's by Harry C. Box. Set Lighting Technician's Handbook, when was it? This is the 3rd edition. Let's see when it first came out. Does it say? It says copyright 2003, but I'm pretty sure it came out long before then. Not sure. Is that when this particular version came out? But anyway, it covers everything you could need to know working in television and film, because it covers the tools you'd need. It covers, let's leaf through it, covers types of lights, stands, mounting of stands, the filters you can put across lights. A lot of this has changed now. There is a new version of this book, the 4th edition, that covers LED lighting. But having said that, it's quite important to know about all these other older light sources because they all are completely relevant. That looks like kinoflow type stuff. It covers the illumination of actors, the angles of illumination, the effects it has, and devices you can use to reflect and bounce light. And in that sense, it doesn't really matter. You know, if the lighting technology changes again to a completely different light source, then it will cover things like, you know, it's ultimately light when it comes to crunch. You can use the information contained in this book to shape that very same light in use in your productions. It also has a load of safety information about avoiding working near power lines. I mean, it really does cover everything. It covers electrical theory. It covers rigging, knot tying, controllers, plugs, the wiring of said plugs, control systems. It's got loads and loads of charts. It even gives information in cherry pickers and the reach that you can expect to get and gel colours. It's basically everything you could possibly need to know about set lighting. And it's another of these books that it's quite nice to just pick it up, open at a random page and just start reading. It's good, very good. The final book is very British oriented. It's a sort of essential book in the UK if you work in the entertainment industry, if you're making electrical connections, running cables in, or testing the installations. And it came about because they introduced BS 7909. Now, BS 7671 is the British electrical wiring regulations. And BS 7909 is a subset of that, which relates to outdoor installations. So this book was written by James Eade, who also runs courses in BS 7909. The courses, as he points out when he runs them, are aimed at refreshing the knowledge of existing electricians. You have to go into the course with a basic electrical knowledge, because if you won't get anything from the course if you don't understand basic electrics. Ultimately, it is aimed at existing electricians as such. But the book is a guide to everything about supplies and the problems associated with if you've got a generator and you run it into a building and there's any cross-bonding between the earth, between those buildings, you have to know what type of supplies come into the other building to determine the wire size for proper safety protection. Because in some instances with certain electrical systems, you can get the full, if a fault occurs, you can get the full building's supply current going through the earth wire. And if you've got a generator with an earth electrode, then that's not that great. It covers harmonics. It covers protection, connectors, testing ground electrodes, the best arrangement of ground electrodes, why sticking an earth electrode under the tyre of a generator is completely unacceptable, and lying it flat in the ground is also unacceptable. It's got charts for copper conductor sizes, current ratings, protection, trip curves of circuit breakers. It's got everything in it. And I've been on James Eads' course. There's not really much choice. See, when they introduce a new standard and you're an electrician, you have to get a qualification in that. So the BS 7909, I had to go and get qualified in that, because otherwise, because of the way Britain works these days with this new era of crash certification, it meant that a 16-year-old could go in this course and would effectively be more qualified than me. They don't look at previous qualifications or experience in the UK. It's very odd. But one really good thing, before going the course, I thought, right, I'm going to have to familiarise myself with this BS 7909 standard. And having read some British standards, they're not good to read. They are often really bloated. But do you know what? BS 7909, the people working in the industry had major involvement in the writing of that standard. And I read the standard, I read it in one sitting, and it was brilliant. It was completely readable, made common sense, it was logical, it was really clean and fresh to see a properly designed standard. Other things I could say about that. James Ead, he runs these courses. If you work in the industry in the UK and you want to come up to date with BS 7909, then you'll find his courses are available. They're presented at various centres. I attended mine at Pacific Quay in Glasgow. And one of the nice things is that it was, like most modern courses, this particular one lasted 3 days. There are one-day courses being passed off by people, BS 7909. They might as well just send your certificate and not even have you attend. They're useless. Don't do a one-day BS 7909 course. I'm not sure why MD would think you could even present that unless they're just not really competent themselves. But the BS 7909, the 3-day course, is jam-packed from start to finish. It covers... It's a standard course that is done as a slideshow. You've got the notes in front of you, and after each module there's a test, but it's an open book test. It's not like a traditional exam as such. But the difference here is that instead of James Ead, when he's present the course, being one of these presenters of shitty one-day courses that loads a presentation to a laptop and bangs a space bar and reads whatever comes up on the screen, then hands out a multiple choice test, puts the template over the top. The difference is that James Ead is technically competent. He can answer technical questions, and he often gets sidetracked into talking about things during the course that are specific to those of the people at the actual attending the course. So at the very least, if you're involved in the British entertainment industry, and this also covers all outdoor wiring, I would say. It covers temporary power generators, and in many ways it covers people who work on farms, because it covers areas that extraneous metal items that could become live if cables are near them, and the sensitivity of animals to voltage gradient, because many events are done outdoors in fields, and animals, because they get 4 feet connecting with the ground, they are very prone to sensing electrical leakage, which can cause them discomfort, or if you get significant earth leakage, it can kill animals quite easily. There are videos of that happening on the internet, unfortunately. Cows in a milking parlour or something, that suddenly they all keel over when something passes current through the ground. And this covers all that stuff. So if you were working in farm electrics, if you were working in temporary power, if you're working in the event industry, this makes a good, sensible, well-written book. But it is relative just to the UK. It's very interesting. And that is my selection of books, from the essential show control type stuff to just the pleasure of just looking up information on neon technology and understanding how the diameter of tubes affects the voltage across them, and the gas content as well, and the pressures. All very good. So there is absolutely still a place for books, and if you're working in any particular industry, you'll find these books an extremely valuable source for information that is all together in one place, instead of having to scrabble about on the internet trying to find it.